Welcome, players, to the next level. Here on the Batmandrew podcast, we believe that life is an immersive experience, best lived one campaign at a time. Every week, we load up a new save file and dive deep into the most interesting worlds across video games, movies, and all things fandom, all brought from the perspective of just an everyday regular dude like me. Today's mission is locked and loaded and ready for launch, so grab your controllers and remember, your campaign starts now. Welcome to the Batmandrew podcast, and on today's episode, we're talking about the X-Men. Specifically the X-Men that we plan on seeing in the current MCU. And is wedging mutants into this pre-existing universe with the Avengers going to make it impossible to tell a clean, cohesive story? Listen, the reality is that once we cross the finish line of Secret Wars, I do believe that the MCU needs a hard reboot. I think Kevin Feige has explicitly teased, a mutant saga and I think he's done that for a reason. And if I had my way, this is probably wishful thinking. I say you step away from everything we know to be true in the MCU. The Iron Mans of the world, the Captain America, whichever one you want to be able to call on, Hulk, Thor, Fantastic Four, everything. And I think we focused completely on the mutants first. And I think we're going to find ourselves in a world, I hope we find ourselves in a world that hits a reset that makes this transition from Avengers to X-Men a little bit more reasonable to digest. Because right now, if you shoehorn in the X-Men, I don't know if it's going to work the way that we want it to work. There are some core attributes about the X-Men that we need to make sure that we stay highly focused on, right? So like when it comes to mutants, one of the things that make them so intriguing, and the reason why they were so popular in the 90s with the 90s comics and stuff, because they were relatable. Like we at that time, and even now, I'm sure, as we were reading those X-Men comics, we related to the fact that we felt isolated, we felt called out, we felt like people didn't like us, and there was that sense of bigotry, right? Racism tones and things like that made those comics relevant. And I think you need that kind of background if you're going to introduce the X-Men into the MCU. But right now, because of how Fox owned the rights to the X-Men and they weren't around when these movies started, how do you shoehorn that in to a world? How does a world who is supposed to have hate mutants for the last 30 years all of a sudden turn around and hate mutants now? And also in the MCU, we don't really hide secret identities. Everyone knows who everyone is. So the idea that mutants are in isolation and hiding themselves, it doesn't quite make sense to me. So I think that I have the ultimate mutant blueprint. Now, full disclosure, I'm an absolute fucking nobody. So Marvel probably has a far better way of being able to handle how they're going to introduce mutants. But I have a couple of thoughts, and I thought I would share them today because I'm super excited about the upcoming mutant saga, if that's truly the route they go. I know there's a lot of conversations about Sadie Sink playing Jean Grey in Spider-Man. I don't think she's going to be Jean Grey. I don't. A couple of people I've heard mention that they think she might be Hope Summers. I could see that route. I hope she's not Jean Grey because I don't want the X-Men teenagers. And I'm sorry, Sadie Sink I know is an adult, but she looks like she's 12. And I think because of the fact that we just saw her in Stranger Things where she was supposed to be playing a teenager, I think it's hard to be able to get that idea out of your head. Maybe Spider-Man Brand New Day will help change that for me. But for right now, if she's playing our Jean Grey, I feel like we're going to get a very significantly young X-Men. And then there's rumors going around like Adam Driver is rumored to be able to play Magneto. They're talking about Patrick, is it Patrick Williams, I think is his name? The guy who was Aquaman's brother, potentially playing Professor X. And the problem with these castings is that we're going to get a childlike X-Men. And that's honestly not what I want. I don't want teeny boppers. I want full grown-ass adults playing X-Men. And here's why I think this is important. Because for fans like you and fans like me, the fact is that we watched the X-Men in the 90s when we were growing up and we were younger and we were in our children age, young teenager age, moving now into adults. If we're truly getting an adult driven, or excuse me, if we truly get into the X-Men and we want it to be able to be relatable, I think it needs to be an adult driven X-Men. You didn't have Wolverine in Fox's X-Men wasn't a teenager. Cyclops, Jean Grey, they were all adults. And although there were significant problems with that Fox X-Men universe, it really started to derail when we got First Class. First Class was great. First of all, let me just say that X-Men First Class was an amazing movie. But when it evolved into X-Men Apocalypse and X-Men Phoenix or whatever, and we started getting, you know, the teenage Sophie Turner, Jean Grey, and all that kind of stuff. And I was watching, I think it was Apocalypse maybe, the other night. It was just on, and I just had it in the background as I was kind of watching it. And you had the way that Nightcrawler looked in it was just, it was terrible, right? I don't know, it just didn't hit because I don't know, it felt like I was watching a realistic cartoon, and I didn't like it. I think that giving us an adult cast is what needs to happen because the core X-Men audience grew up in the 90s. We're adults now, and we don't need a high school teeny bopper drama series. The MCU started with Iron Man. It started with Captain America. It started with Bruce Banner. And they weren't just fresh out of high school and just got done with their prom. They were full-grown adults dealing with heavy, mature stakes. And I think the X-Men need to follow the exact same level of maturity for this in order to be able to be successful. I don't think we get that if Sadie Sink is our Jean Grey. It's not that I don't like Sadie Sink. To me, that is a younger demographic of X-Men that I just don't want out of the MCU. So, what do I do want? What do I do want? Does that sound right? What do I want? What do I want? I want a core roster that resembles the First Class we got in the comics. Okay? I want Cyclops. I want Jean Grey. I want Beast. I want Iceman. I want Angel. I want them led by Professor X. I want that core retro X-Men cast that we got. I think that would be a great way to be able to start the mutant saga in the MCU. You notice who I didn't say. I didn't say Wolverine. I think you bench Wolverine. I think we need to take a breath from Wolverine. Unless if you plan on giving me the Calverine, which, by the way, was maybe the funniest cameo and drop in that Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Unless you plan on giving me Henry Cavill for Wolverine, which I would take. I would take Henry Cavill as Wolverine. I think that is amazing casting for Wolverine. Unless if you're planning on giving me that, let's take a break. Let's take a break from Logan. Let's just sit him out for the first couple of movies. Let Hugh Jackman's legacy kind of as Wolverine kind of let it sizzle a little bit. Let us as fans appreciate it and give us a universe that doesn't have Wolverine right off the bat, so that way we can appreciate whoever is the next casting. Allow Cyclops to do his job. Allow him to be the leader of the X-Men. That Fox universe, and I don't blame them for it, but they went very Wolverine heavy because that is arguably the most popular X-Men character. And I understand that, I'm telling you, leave them out the first movie or two. Don't give us Wolverine right off the bat. Let us have Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Iceman, and Angel. Let us have that core 5 of mutants for the X-Men. Leave him out, even though he's the most popular. But we're not talking about starting a new franchise with a studio that hasn't had the last 20 years of success that Marvel has had. We're talking about the MCU. We're talking about Kevin Feige. We're talking about Marvel. We're talking about this universe. And however they decide to put it in there, I think we will be okay without Wolverine for a little bit. I think we need to take a little bit of a break. I do. But here's where I think that the most important strategy is for entering into the mutant saga. I think it's the villains. Marvel has done a terrible job. I'm going to repeat this for the people in the back. Marvel has done a terrible job at executing their villains. A couple being the exception. Thanos, obviously. Look, I love Thanos. I have the Infinity Stones tattooed on my hand. I love Thanos. Thanos is great. Loki, anti-hero ish, right? Villain, anti-hero. They did a great job on Loki. Past that, the villains in the MCU have been abysmal. And yeah, sure, we're probably going to get Ultron back in the Vision Quest series, but for the most part, most of these villains have been one and done, and they haven't been great. When you look at the rogues gallery of villains, obviously, I think if you're talking Marvel, Spider-Man has the best rogues gallery of villains. But clearly, there are issues to be able to use Spider-Man in this universe, right? You gotta have your partnership with Sony and everything. So if you're just talking about what can Marvel do with the Rogue Squad of villains from the X-Men, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull you guys up a list of villains and routes they could go with X-Men villains, and I think that not that this needs to be necessarily a villain saga, but I think that there are a lot of ways that you could create a universe of villains that would really help um, to mold out this mutant saga. Okay, so first things first, no more one and done villains. No more one and done villains, unless if it matters significantly to the development of your story. Quit killing off our villains. Allow them to have a chance to be able to come back, right? Like allow them to be able to have a chance to reappear and make impacts in the MCU, right? Because there's some villains that you've given us in the MCU, like Dormammu. Where's he been? We're two Doctor Strange movies in a multiverse of incursions, and we haven't seen Dormammu again. Galactus. I mean, we didn't see our universe's Galactus, I guess. We saw the Fantastic Four. Hey, I'm wearing a Fantastic Four shirt for those of you who are in the live chat. We saw Galactus in Fantastic Four, but that's not going to be our Galactus. Obviously, that's not going to be our Silver Surfer, right? So, like, villains do not have a history of reappearing unless if you're Thanos or Loki. And I think that some of these villains are villains that need to desperately be able to make a comeback. Okay, so here we go. Here's the Rogues Gallery of villains that I think that they need to be able to utilize. First one's first, Magneto. He does not need to be. He needs to be in the first movie. He does not need to be the villain in the first movie. He doesn't. Magneto does not need to be the villain in the first X-Men movie. He needs to have a presence. He needs to have an important role. He needs to be able to set up what this world looks like. But instead of rehashing Magneto right away, give us a different villain. Who do you give us? Apocalypse? No, it's too soon. That is your Thanos. Apocalypse is your Thanos in the Mutant Saga, and I need him done right. Marvel, I need Apocalypse done right. I think you need to introduce time travel when you do it. I do. I think you need to give us a true survival of the fittest Age of Apocalypse storyline. Do I need Wolverine with the, afro bushy hair and the missing one hand? Probably not. But I do think you need to give us a good 2-movie arc of Age of Apocalypse. You have Mr. Sinister. That could be a great villain for the first movie if you really wanted to go that route. But I feel like if you do them for the first villain, you're doing, again, another one and done villain. And I think that, really honestly, when you're talking about the creation of clones and things like that, I feel like I feel like Mr. Sinister could potentially be a larger villain for the Mutant Saga than just going to the first one. You can't really do Cassandra Nova because we already saw her in Deadpool and Wolverine. You don't want to do Dark Phoenix right away, right? Because I think that that's another story arc. Like if Thanos, if Apocalypse is your Thanos in this Mutant Saga, Dark Phoenix would likely be kind of your Doomsday, if you will, for Avengers moving forward. The Sentinels, I don't think Sentinels need to be an actual true villain of the movie. We don't need like Trask to be a antagonist in this, but I do think the Sentinels need to be able to be a staple in this new mutant saga. Think about how the X-Men cartoon started, right? If you guys remember, because X-Men 97 has been on a roll. I love X-Men 97. But think about the original X-Men cartoon. How did it start? It started with not Jean Grey, Jubilee walking through the mall and then Sentinels crashing into it, and all of a sudden you're like, what world do I live in? That's how this should start. I do. I think the Sentinels should have a presence in it, but I don't think they should be the main antagonist. So that leads me to who I believe should be the main villain in the first X-Men movie. If you give us a Cyclops, a Jean Grey, a Beast, Iceman, an Angel led by Professor X, you give us that original core X-Men, you give us the Hellfire Club. You give us the exclusive secret society of those wealthy elitist, powerful mutants in that inner circle, and I think you give us Emma Frost. Why do you give us the Hellfire Club first? Because it's relatable. It is. It's relatable. If you look at the landscape of the world right now, we absolutely hate the one percenters. We do. Like we hate the wealthy elitists who like the last episode I just recorded. We were talking about Sony. Everyone hates Sony right now for PlayStation because they're the wealthy elitists. Give us the Hellfire Club because I think it gives us a couple of things. Again, it gives us a relatable antagonist that we can want to be able to hate and root against. But I think it gives you some avenues to open doors to how you could allow this universe to be able to breathe and develop. And it gives us something different that the Fox universe didn't give us. You give us a true Hellfire Club, I think you're going to give us a world that feels lived in. It feels like it has some history and tradition, right? Because the Hellfire Club just didn't start overnight. It wasn't like a couple of people got together and was like, hey, let's start a group. The Hellfire Club has been around for ages. And I think that if you give us the Hellfire Club in the first X-Men movie, I think it sets lore. I think it sets tradition. I think it sets history. And I think that that's going to be important to make us feel like we're not rushing in to the MCU or to the mutant saga of the MCU. The original MCU, listen, it took over a decade of patient world building to earn the Infinity War and Endgame. Don't rush the X-Men. Like, we're here, finally, Marvel. We're here with the X-Men. Don't rush into the Phoenix Saga. Don't rush into Age of Apocalypse. Don't let the subplots simmer. Let the characters build real relationships and earn those massive comic book events naturally. That's kind of my concern for Doomsday, right? Is it going to feel earned to be at this point? Because Infinity War and Endgame felt earned. What is Doomsday going to feel like? And I think as we transition into the Mutant Saga, I think it's important to give us a more not grounded, that's not the word I'm looking for, a more traditional take, I guess you should say, and give us those X-Men who are adults, who honestly, old men like Professor X and Magneto are using these young adults. I say young adults, middle-aged adults, if you will, are using them in order to fight the battles that they can't really fight anymore. And I think that that's super important. And then, of course, there's other villains that we're talking about. Like Juggernaut's one of my favorite villains. One of my favorite villains as well as Sabretooth. I think both of them are kind of like, B-list villains, if you will, depending on how they go and how much of a hard reboot they decide to do would really depend on like if how they introduce Scarlet Witch into this and that kind of stuff. And I also think that there's a world to be able to look at, like, X-Men characters that were introduced in the comics like late, like Onslaught, for example. But obviously that's going to be years and years down the road. because you can't really do Onslaught like with the first one. I mean, I guess you could if you really wanted to, but you'd really kind of fuck up what we know of the X-Men to be if you did that. So there are some avenues you could go, but my definitive answer on what should that first X-Men movie look like, it should be the original cast or the original group of X-Men that we got. I think it should be Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Iceman, and Angel, led by Professor X. I think you should keep it simple. Go ahead and have the school. Go ahead and have other students. You can even tease other X-Men if you want. That's fine. But I think your smaller core roster should be them, and I think it should be the Hellfire Club. I think that is your villain for the X-Men movie. I think that is easily the best route to be able to go to. But it's not about what I think. It's about what you guys think. Do you agree that Marvel needs to pull the plug and completely have that hard reboot after we get through Secret Wars? And if they do you want the X-Men to be able to hang out with the Avengers on day one, or do you want to build a mutant world aside from that? Honestly, I think they should just keep it separate. I would love if they just kept it separate, but they're probably not going to do that. So what does this world look like after Secret Wars? Drop it in the comments below. I want to be able to keep the conversation going. I want to be able to hear your thoughts. So remember to always like and subscribe, guys, and more importantly, share, because good friends share shitty podcasts with good friends. And hey, that's what we are. We're a shitty podcast that you should share with your best friend. Also, guys, I just want to be able to tell you that thank you for listening to this podcast today, because I know that it's hard to make time for the things that we love. So the fact that you took time out of your day today to listen to the podcast and spend time with me, this truly means the world to me. And I just want to thank you for being here. I'll catch you guys again at the same Batmandrew time on the same Batmandrew channel. Thanks, guys.